This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Kasheef Wyzard on the show, and he serves as the National Director for Dream.org's tech program. We're going to talk a little bit about how what they do there. We're going to talk some about his background when it comes to tech in general, empathy, engaging, and just becoming better leaders. Anyway, with all that being said, Kasheef, welcome to the show.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Yeah, certainly. No worries. Well, to tell my story, I always start with the origin and the fact that, I'm a first generation American. I'm born to parents of Caribbean descent. And really, I attribute where I am today as a result of interventions made very early on in my education specifically. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, which has its systemic challenges like many other cities. But Boston is especially famous for their systemic challenges. This is a city that has the highest wealth disparity. It was at one point number one, it's top 5, but highest wealth disparity between African Americans and Caucasians, whereas the average net worth of a white household is $250,000, where unfortunately for African Americans, it's only $8. So this is the environment that I grew up in, and very, very fortunate that my parents did research and they put me in a busing program. And I went to school about, an hour plus away from the 3rd grade until I left the state of Massachusetts. But that dichotomy between where I lived and the challenges in the inner city that I saw every day, that dichotomy between where I lived and where I was going to school, that certainly planted seeds because I could see that there was a clear difference in communities where I went to school, where I lived. So that seed was planted and eventually watered. So fast forward, I leave Boston. I graduate high school and attend college, Georgia State University in the state of Georgia. And the first job for me out of college was a business development role where I worked for a big tobacco company. So I worked in big tobacco. And in this role, essentially I grew the business. I managed the territory across 3 states and did work that certainly developed me as a professional in being able to, build partnerships, articulate value proposition, manage business. However, I was essentially selling product and doing work that didn't align with who I was. I'm not a smoker. I'm actually now additionally a health and wellness professional. And the communities impacted by the service that I was providing look like communities that I come from, right? So I'm in a business that, again, didn't sit right with me in my soul. And it took some time. It took years, actually. But eventually, I believe I manifested my way out of that role, and an opportunity opened at a nonprofit organization back in Atlanta. I took that position. I took that job, and I worked at the National Black MBA Association in a partnership development role where I work with major corporations and help them achieve their DEI goals based on the services that we provided. So now all of a sudden I'm able to leverage the skill sets, those transferable skill sets that I honed and I developed in big tobacco, but now I'm doing it in a space where the service that I'm providing is fulfilling, because I know underrepresented groups, minorities are benefited from the work that I'm doing. And while in that role, I noticed a unique challenge specific to DEI recruitment for diverse talent in the tech sector. And I started working with tech companies to advance their DEI goals while at National Black MBA Association. And that eventually opened the door to the organization that I'm at now, where I stepped in, joined the team at dream.org, their tech team, and purposefully built relationship with tech companies and helped them fulfill technical roles with diverse talent. So not a linear journey to where I am today, but it never is. And again, I think, a theme there, seeds planted early, and want to do work that aligned with me and help people that come from challenged communities like me, and then transferable skills. Throughout my career path, I certainly honed some skill sets that no matter the sector that I'm in, they add value. And I'm now here working in the tech sector with these skills.
Awesome. So I have a lot of questions. Yeah, I want to go way back to, you talked about the the financial inequality in Boston from races and stuff like that. Oh, do we have a good understanding of like, is it getting worse or better, or what's the progress of that, and how is that going on right now? Basically throughout the entire United States, not just Boston, but everywhere.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the stat is within the stat that I shared with you. You can literally Google it. It's a stat that is still referenced, and I've been at several convenings this year. It's a stat that's still referenced, meaning that there certainly hasn't been visible change, specifically in Boston, and a lot of the same challenges exist. And one could argue, especially considering COVID, that not just COVID, but COVID plus a growing skill set gap as it pertains to technology, that challenges, wealth disparity, you name it, those gaps are growing, right? Yeah. We're at a time period where if you don't have skill sets that align with, jobs of the future, right? And so I go down a rabbit hole right now in regards to, AI and just, again, the prevalence and the usage of technology to supercharge all solutions. If you don't have transferable skill sets, not necessarily hard technical skills, but even just skill sets such as, for example, being able to sell, right? If you don't have skill sets that could be leveraged within that sector in the future, you're certainly at a disadvantage. And that's part of the reason why, an organization like mine exists.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And we're seeing, I actually had a guest on a couple weeks ago. One of the things that we're talking about entrepreneurship and business. And one of the things that they said is it doesn't matter what business you're in these days, you are in a tech business. Yeah, because technology is a core of any businesses these days. So having those skills is really important. And, if you're not given the right opportunities, you're not going to, those aren't skills that you just, make up. And, yes, there are a lot of more opportunities now to get those skills with YouTube and a lot of free opportunities. But if you don't have that role model or that community around you to help you be encouraged to go in the right direction and tell you what the right direction is, it's going to be very difficult.
Exactly. And I'm going to actually just throw a stat out there and say one thing. So not only has technology changed the world, but also simultaneously the world is on fire, right? Where we have substantial challenges related to climate, carbon emissions, pollution. There's a stat that 46% of jobs that exist today will be gone by 2030. And that's due to technological advances and automation. Another stat, though, is that because of the Inflation Reduction Act, which was authorized by Biden, but also global powers came together with the Paris Act to came together and created goals to drive down carbon emissions. So in addition to the Inflation Reduction Act, powers that be have come together to invest in infrastructure change and driving down pollution. So due to the Inflation Reduction Act and that investment of $369 billion, 900,000 new jobs will be created annually from now to 2032. So this is an unprecedented time to acquire skills that will position you again, for the future of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is it that you guys are kind of doing to help this problem over at Dream?
Yeah. So I'll shout out the organization that pays me, the organization that I am blessed to be in a leadership position and connect community to opportunity. So what Dream.org does is, for one, the mission is to close prison doors, open doors of opportunity. Dream.org brings people together across racial, social, partisan lines and creates a future with freedom, dignity, and opportunity for all. So there are two key social issue areas that we focus on, which is criminal justice reform, and then there is climate justice. So considering those two verticals, those two priorities, what I do, leading our tech program is, I create economic opportunity for BIPOC talent in the tech sector. So we prioritize system impacted talent that's been impacted by the justice system. So for example, 20% of the scholarship resources, we have a scholarship fund as one resource. 20% of our scholarships go to system impacted talent. And in addition to that, we're hyper-focused on supporting BIPOC entrepreneurs, founders that have solutions that drive down carbon emission, meaning they have climate tech solutions, and we're hyper-focused on supporting BIPOC founders that have solutions that decarcerate the prison industrial complex. So in regards to resources and how we do that, I mentioned the scholarship fund. That's a scholarship up to $3,500 towards any technical certification. We are hyper-focused right now on upskilling that will propel talent into sustainability, so a climate career pathway. And prior to that, we actually ran cohorts, like technical trainings, where we partnered with actual tech companies, reverse engineered from their technical needs, and upskilled underrepresented, non-traditional talent of color to fulfill those technical roles. So we've been in the space of upskilling and or directly training underrepresented talent, getting resources to them that they don't typically have. 150 plus people trained through our technical cohorts. We no longer doing that in a formal way, but we still are deploying scholarships, and we've deployed over 600 scholarships in the last 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
So, and now, again, as I mentioned, with our evolved and most recent strategy, we're hyper-focused on supporting talent employers of the future, right? Those entrepreneurs. No longer, especially considering COVID and the economic challenges over the last 2 years, that put us in a challenging position to sell our services and the value of partnering with us to corporations. So we're reinvesting that energy, that time, and hyper-focusing on accelerating entrepreneurs, BIPOC founders, and their solutions. So we just graduated or ended a launchpad, as we called it. It was a climate tech launchpad, which was a fellowship, an accelerator basically, of 10 BIPOC founders, all people of color. 7 of the 10 were female founders, and they had amazing climate solutions. And we partnered with Village Capital and put them through essentially investment readiness training over a 12-week period, and then culminated with a demo day in San Jose at one of the largest sustainability conferences in the country. But that's just one example of the way that we support these founders. So whether it's accelerator programming and ensuring that, again, they're investor ready and able to acquire contracts, draw down on funding, or attract investors. But then we're also extending services like grant writer support and other entities that either cost them time or cost them money. Like, we stand in the gap for these founders because not only do they have amazing solutions, but these solutions also benefit communities that, are most challenged, most underrepresented, most impacted by pollution. And that network that we're building of founders is called the Dream Entrepreneurs Network.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, it sounds like you guys are more than just a network. You're also kind of like an incubator to help support and grow these entrepreneurs and their businesses up so that they can be self-supporting and eventually give back themselves.
Exactly. Yep, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a ton of questions still about how this all works. And I'm curious, though, do you have any success stories, either individually, like someone with a scholarship that came out and turned their life around and had this massive success or something like that you guys have personally touched you?
Yeah. I mean, there certainly are stories, and that's part of the work that we do, is to amplify those stories. Right now I'm going to put him in the spot. I got to think of one off the top of my head. What I can say, again, think about someone. I know a recent scholarship recipient, and has not yet fully turned his life around, but this is a major indicator, right? This is someone that not only was impacted by the criminal justice system, meaning incarcerated, but also has been a victim of gun violence. So this individual was a victim of gun violence, is paralyzed from the waist down, and through a long journey to find himself and understand, that he still is valuable and can be a resource through telling his story, through moving people in the inner city to do the type of work that he is now doing. This is a person that was deserving of the scholarship because he has those intrinsic leadership qualities. And just talking to this individual, it took us some time to realize that. But now he's working with a sustainability nonprofit, actually based out of Boston, Massachusetts, and in a role where he's connecting the community to opportunities. And they're doing amazing work where they're actually training underrepresented talent to be pilots and fly drones, right? This is a transportation trap. If you think about the different verticals and solutions that are needed right now to drive down carbon emissions, transportation is one of those. So this gentleman is working in this organization at a point where he's trying to build on those skill sets to do more, and is considering actually being a pilot now himself. And the scholarship that he was just provided is going to help him on that career path. So that was just one example, and it came to mind because we just closed a recent scholarship cycle and awarded this individual. But we have a lot of stories like that, from the most impacted to individuals who are just pivoting in their careers, pivoting from non-technical roles to the tech sector and leveraging our scholarship fund for those purposes. So Lots of different stories from individuals ranging anywhere from 18 to 45,
Wow.
Which, I think is also amazing too.
So is there a lot of like work that needs to be done? I can just think of trying to, be empathetic and think about this from a personal standpoint, but
Yeah.
I was in a situation like that to where, I grew up in poverty, maybe was impacted by the justice system, like the examples that you mentioned, and got an opportunity to get a scholarship, learn a skill. I would almost feel like, have that imposter syndrome, like it's something that, should I be here?
Absolutely.
And is there a lot of like coaching that needs to happen to help develop the confidence
Yeah,
that's
100%.
needed to be successful?
100%. Well, I say this, it is a proven statistic that people of color, especially from underrepresented communities, they experience imposter syndrome more than their non-melanated peers. So think about just the messaging, right? What we see on TV, what we hear, the access or lack of access that we have from an educational perspective. By default, when in spaces that are different from the environment we grow up in, we experience imposter syndrome. So that's already a fact, regardless. That's already a fact by default. So to your point, though, especially pivoting into the tech sector, acquiring new skills, stepping into new spaces, it's critical that talent get that support. And that's actually one of the foundational skills trainings that we have historically provided. We have shifted some of our curriculum in the professional development sessions that we do, but over the last 4 years, we've delivered, anywhere from 5 to 8 imposter syndrome training sessions, right? So that they're getting exposure to resources, just being able to acknowledge the fact that you're feeling that, right? It starts there, and then having some tangible tools to deal with it moving forward. So great question, and yes, you're spot on. And I'm even thinking about my trajectory into the space that I'm in now. And this is one way that I cultivate high trust in spaces when I'm engaging the communities. I let them know when they see me, they see you, right? I have the same, I come from the same challenges that you come from, and I had experienced at some point some of the same feelings that you have as well. But you know what? You can, you are, you will. And if you think about it, historically, we've done the most with the least. And in addition to doing the most with the least, we're closest to the problems. So if given the opportunity, given access to tools, to skills, guess what? We're more prone to come up with solutions to solve some of our biggest challenges, right? And that's the way in which we encourage the talent that comes through our pipelines.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing to think about and consider is that, people that have gone through struggle, no matter what that struggle is, they build resilience. You build
Absolutely. Great.
ability to kind of overcome, and those skills and that ability, the resilience, isn't isolated to like one thing. And I know you mentioned earlier at the beginning of the conversation that fitness is important to you. And it's one of those things, if you develop the discipline to exercise, to get fit, and to do something, whether it's, you want to train for a marathon or a triathlon, or you just want to hit the gym every day, whatever it is, if you build that discipline in your life, that carries over to the other skills that you do. And there's a quote that I heard that, like, if you see the way in one thing, you see it in all ways. It's one of those things, like if you figure out the fact that I'm resilient, I can get through this, and I can handle hardships, and I can be disciplined about it. I can take that and use it in tech. I can take that and use it in sales. I can take that and use it in whatever skill that I want to apply. And I think that's a great tool that you can do to anybody that has overcome hardships, that they've built that resilience, to let them understand that this is a skill that's a lot of people don't have, that, you do have.
Exactly.
That puts you ahead of the game.
Yeah. Man, you sound like you've been in the field with me and my team recruiting talent, because that's exactly, that's what we talk about. One word to frame and sum up all of that is grit. And
Grit.
they got it, right? So It's acknowledging those intrinsic, invaluable, transferable skills, which oftentimes grit being one of them, and then growth mindset. You got to have a growth mindset, an insatiable curiosity, get better, get a little smarter every day. If you have those two, the rest can be built on. We can stack those other skill sets, but those two are foundational. In addition to being able to communicate other stuff, but those two are very foundational to one's success.
Yeah, I love that too. I love the idea, the concept of just getting better at something every day. And you can completely transform your skill set by just starting out at something that you're terrible at and just get a little bit better every single day. And I've seen it with my kids' lives. I enrolled my kids into martial arts, at a young age, and just seeing how terrible they were, when they first started. But now, as my oldest two are approaching, their black belt, they're getting really close to that. And it's like, things that they were really bad at, they're really good at now. And it's because they put in the time, the discipline, and slowly got 1% better every day.
There you go. What martial arts do they do?
They're doing karate right now.
Dope. So I competed in karate tournaments, but I actually grew up doing taekwondo, and that was just another resource that we had in our community that kept me and my peers out of trouble. And once we not graduated, but as you grow, right, grow older, whether it's sports and life, life pulls on you. I can now acknowledge how that saved a bunch of kids, protected a bunch of kids in our community. And some of them are gone and incarcerated now. And that happened fairly shortly after we, spread our wings and got out of the facility. But taekwondo, I actually won the Junior Olympics gold medalist in sparring and forms 2 years back to back, 2000, when I was 13 and 14. So
nice.
Definitely another just part of my foundation, and salute to your children and you for giving your children exposure to.
Well, I tore my ACL sparring in a tournament just a few months ago. My sparring days, I think, are over now. But it is one of those things that I think when you can look back on where you started and where you are now, it builds so much confidence in you as a beginner at anything you start at, you're going to be terrible at. You're going to suck at the beginning. Well, whether it's tech, whether it's coding, whether it's, writing, reading even, public speaking, you're going to be terrible at it at first. And you just got to realize that I can apply the same mentality of discipline, practice, and I'll get better. And one day I can look back and say, I'm really good at this thing.
100%.
So how important is it? You mentioned fitness, and I think that's a really cool thing to talk about. How important is fitness to you, and do you think it impacts your career as far as making you a good leader and a good technician?
1,000%. I mean, it is me. It's everything. You think about it, and this is also scientifically proven. Those who are accustomed to stress, right? So let's think about what physical activity is. You're stressing your body, and through that stress, forcing adaptation, right? You're either gonna your lungs will grow in their capacity. From a cardiovascular perspective, your muscles will grow, right? You're stressing your body, forcing adaptation. So now going back to my point, those who experience stress regularly, they're able to deal with stress that life throws at them better.
Yes.
Right? So because of the fact that I stress my body 5 to 7 times a week in some way, shape, or form, I'm more resilient because of that. Going back to the word resilience that came up earlier. So I think and my peers, colleagues and so forth talk to me about, my demeanor oftentimes, but I'm steady, and I think a lot of my steadiness, me being even keel, I think a lot of that has been influenced. I probably was like this somewhat growing up for sure, but I'm sure sport and fitness activity, martial arts, all of that has also influenced my disposition and my readiness, for lack of better words. I say stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And if you're, intentional daily about getting that activity in, it'll certainly benefit you in other ways. You mentioned the word discipline too, right? So this is one way that I talk to myself, when I have moments where I'm realizing I'm less disciplined in other areas. I have an area in my life that I can point to where I'm very disciplined. So it helps me. It helps me. It helps me create personal goals to be as disciplined in those other areas.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I love what you said about the you stress yourself. So it's like you take the hardships and the difficulties that you may encounter, and you do it in a controlled environment so that your body gets used to
Exactly.
it. So that when you encounter something difficult in a different environment, your body kind of knows how to handle it. Like your mind knows how to handle it. You're like, I've been here before. I can get through this.
Yep.
And I mean, you can, and just to the listeners out there, there's simple things that you can do. And, you don't have to have any money. You can just be like, I'm going to do 100 push-ups today. And if you can't do 100, then do sets of 10, do sets of 20, do whatever you can and do the 100 push-ups. And just every morning I'm going to do 100 push-ups. Or, when I tore my ACL and I had to get like a couple of, I've torn it twice now. I've been doing martial arts both times. But this last, I had to get a bone graft surgery. And, so one of the things that I've been doing is I'm just doing 100 squats every day, just air squats. I'm just going to get up and do 100 squats. Mm-hmm. And, because I don't want my quad to shrink down the way it did, the last time I had that ACL surgery. So I'm just going to do 100 squats a day. It's a very small thing, but that little bit of discipline and routine of doing that helps me, handle other things that may come up that I have to do performance reviews. Well, those are hard. It's hard to tell people that they messed up. It's hard to tell people they're not good at something. It's hard to coach people in a kind way sometimes. So, I can fall back on something like, doing squats isn't fun either. It's probably one of the least glamorous exercises out there. But
yep. And that's why that's one of my favorite, and we're on a health and wellness tangent here, but I think it's a good one. The day I get most excited about now is leg day, which is, as men, as we acquire that bug, we typically start from the top down and focus on what you can see in the mirror, for lack of better words.
Yeah, we're doing the biceps and the chest. Curls, bench press, right? All that.
That's it. But then over time, that creates imbalances, and you likely and may experience setbacks because of those imbalances. But once you embrace those legs and the challenge that is, because it's the most challenging day for me. So that's the day I get most excited and up about. So it's just creating those anchors in your life that can be referenced to, North Stars, transferable. Again, I used that word earlier, but there are learnings, there are skill sets, activities where you can pull those transferable and pieces from. Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah, I get it 100%. I think that's really cool that you're using fitness for that thing. And it, like I've tried all kinds of different things just, to try to become more disciplined, because I don't consider myself naturally to be very disciplined,
Yeah.
But, for me, sometimes it's just, I'm going to, I tell myself I'm going to take a cold shower, I'm going to, and I'll get in there and the water will be warm. And I'm like, I got to make this cold, just turn it cold and just sit there for, set a timer, do it for a minute, do it for 2 minutes, whatever it is. And, get that discipline of getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. There you go. That's it.
Kasheef, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. And I was curious if there's a way that people could maybe connect with you online if they want to learn more about the resources and things that Dream offers, or just connect with you to have you help share with them, some of your leadership.
Yeah, certainly. So information about dream.org can be found on our website, dream.org. And I highly suggest that individuals interested go to our website. You can subscribe to our newsletters, all the information about the resources that we deploy, the communities that we engage, etc. It's all there. So dream.org. My personal platforms, I can be reached on LinkedIn and with my full name, Kasheef, Kasheef, Wyzard, like the Wizard of Oz, Wyzard. So I can be reached on LinkedIn in that way. And also I have an Instagram, where that's all sides of me, personal and professional. And that is KASHWYZ, Cash Wiz.
Cash Wiz. All right. I'll link that too up in the show notes so people can go there and follow you and connect with you online. Like I said, this has been a great conversation. Really appreciate having you on.
I appreciate the time, John. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to. Click on their links and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.